Hey friends, tonight, let's explore one of the strangest truths in medieval history. Falcons, yes, actual birds had better health care than most peasants. You might think that's some kind of exaggeration. Oh no, it's quite literal. These winged aristocrats were fed better, treated better, and in some cases pampered with more precision than a knight's favorite warhorse. And you've been born a medieval farmer, might have wished you were a bird. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from a windy attic in Vermont or a warm bed in Jakarta, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where and when history is lulling you to sleep. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing on damp straw in the courtyard of a 13th century manor. You're cold, a bit hungry, probably have some early stage rickets. But look over there, beneath a silk canopy, someone just rolled out a velvet-covered perch for a falcon named Alderon. That bird's dinner, 2 quail hearts, and a pigeon liver diced and massaged in warmed broth. And your dinner cabbage stew again, with a generous serving of absolutely nothing else. You shuffle closer, pretending to sweep, while watching the falcon's personal chef use bronze tongs to handle the meat. Not because it's hot, because it's too precious to touch. Nearby, a falconer is humming a little tune while brushing Alderon's feathers with a scented oil that smells suspiciously like rosewater. You haven't bathed in 4 weeks. This bird just had its second bath of the day. Falconry in medieval Europe wasn't just a hobby. It was an art, a social ladder, and a political chess piece with feathers. Owning a falcon was like owning a Tesla, a private jet, and an NFT of a unicorn all rolled into one. It was luxury status and military utility strapped onto a talon. And when a falcon got sick, the manor didn't just notice, they mobilized. There were specialist men trained to read feather condition, examine beaks, and detect melancholia of wing. If your knee was dislocated after falling in the mill, well, good luck with that. The miller might offer a prayer. Alderon, on the other hand, would get heated cloth wraps and 2 days off hunting. Strangely enough, falcons even had food laws. In some noble houses, specific birds had unique feeding charts, seasonal diets, feeding times adjusted by daylight hours, and even portion control based on weight and flight activity. You know who didn't have portion control, peasants? You ate what was left when it was left, if anything was left. The role of the falconer was no small job either. These weren't humble bird watchers. Falconers were skilled, respected, and sometimes even feared for their knowledge of herbal medicine and bird anatomy. In some cases, they knew more about treating avian infections than a barber surgeon knew about treating, say, a human fever. Honestly, you wouldn't blame a peasant for trying to impersonate a bird just to get that kind of attention. It wasn't just about nutrition and grooming. Even emotions mattered. Some records suggest that if a falcon appeared listless or sulky, it might be given a day of quiet time or taken to open fields to restore its spirits. A peasant showing signs of burnout. Oh, that's just laziness. Back to the fields. And here's the fun part. Falcons didn't just eat better, they lived better. Their quarters, called mews, were often insulated and cleaned daily. They were built with more care than the peasant huts, some of which had dirt floors, shared walls with livestock, and charming features like holes in the roof that doubled as rain alarms. Even your own clothes are probably patched 6 times over, and your boots have seen better decades. But the falcon's hood is stitched from imported leather. The little bell on its leg, handcrafted by a master artisan. And don't even think about the embroidery on the bird's travel blanket. Yes, that's a thing. Here's a weird detail. Falcon chefs. Yes, some noble households had. One were instructed on food temperature. A dish that was too cold for the chest could lead to chill in the liver. A made-up condition perhaps, but one taken extremely seriously. Meanwhile, if your broth was too cold, you just drank it faster before it congealed. And if you say, broke a finger in the field, you wrapped it in wool and hoped for the best. If a falcon chipped its beak, they might fly in an expert from another county. Imagine that a medieval bird had a better out-of-network provider than you. By now, you're beginning to realize something slightly tragic and deeply funny. These birds were not just prized. They were basically noble. Their wings granted them immunity from neglect. They had paperwork lineage records, custom feeding knives, and a care routine that frankly wouldn't be out of place in a luxury spa. And no joke, some falcons had better table manners. They were trained to accept food from a silver ring and eat delicately. You, meanwhile, are likely chewing bark because someone said it's good for tooth pain. But let's not be too hard on medieval people. They weren't completely heartless toward humans. They just had a hierarchy of care that placed warbirds with tiny helmets slightly above toddlers with coughs. Oh, and speaking of those helmets, some falcons really did wear ornate hoods with little embroidered crests. You wore a potato sack with holes. Not a competition. Just a very unfortunate contrast. And now, as the falcon settles in for its afternoon nap in a sunlit perch, you return to your corner of the stable, curling into the scratchy hay and coughing softly. You stare through a crack in the wood, catching the golden shimmer of the bird's brushed feathers. A single thought echoes in your head. In my next life, please let me be a falcon. 3 light jokes for the night. Medieval falcons had wellness retreats. You had a leaky roof and a splinter named after you. That falcon's diet plan, keto, paleo, and postmodern fusion. Yours. If it doesn't move, eat it. You'd see the falcon's saddle before you'd see a pillow. You wake up to the sound of soft cooing, not from doves, but from a falconer making gentle whistles to his bird. It's still barely dawn. Dew clings to your tunic like regret, and your back hurts in ways that make you wonder if you aged 30 years overnight. You sit up and stretch, and that's when you spotted a tiny wooden cart rolling down the manor path. On it, an apothecary's chest. And no, it's not for you. It's for the falcon, Alderaan. The feathered lord of the air is getting a health check today. Not because he's sick, no. It's just a routine examination. Preventive medicine. That's right. While the village midwife is still learning how to set a broken bone by squinting at it, Alderaan gets a trained animal physician to examine his breath, his pupils, and possibly even his attitude. The falconer opens the chest with reverence, revealing a collection of tools that would make your village healer gasp. Bronze scalpel, dried herbs imported from Iberia, fine linen bandages, a tiny earthen jar labeled salva for wing abrasion. There's even a little jar of honey, mixed with saffron for heaven's sake, meant to soothe the temperament of anxious birds. The falcon, calm as a monk, you once had to soak a foot wound in a pig trough while someone prayed over you. And they weren't even sure which saint to pray to. What's more surreal is how the falconer talks to the bird, like an old friend. There we go, my little knight. he murmurs as he rubs a fragrant balm under the wings. Just a routine. Just to look at those claws. Meanwhile, you're reasonably sure your local lord hasn't spoken to you in 3 harvests. When he does, it usually starts with, "Why is that fence still broken?" And here's the kicker. There are manuals for this stuff. Actual treatises written by medieval scholars, some even in Latin, on the health and care of falcons. One from the 13th century offers a full guide to diagnosing falcon coughs. Falcon coughs. And if you, a person, cough too much, people assume you're cursed or worse, a hypochondriac. Time to go breathe in more fireplace smoke and walk it off. Let's talk about training. You might have thought a sick falcon would get some basic rest and be back in the sky tomorrow. Oh no. There's a recovery regimen, physical therapy sort of. They stretch the wings gently, monitor weight, sometimes even offer lavender-scented rooms. Okay, maybe just lavender hung in the mew. But still, it's the 1200s. And that counts. You, by contrast, pulled a muscle last week, trying to carry a water bucket, and you're still limping. Your treatment. Try not to do that again. At this point, you start to wonder who's truly the servant here, the falcon or the falconer, because it looks suspiciously like one's wearing a leather hood and the other's on a 24/7 spa staff. There's a saying among falconers, a sick bird is no less noble than a healthy one. That's lovely, almost poetic. Meanwhile, if a peasant gets sick, they're suddenly unreliable labor. Not poetic, just inconvenient. And in case you're thinking, well, maybe it was just the elite birds, nope. Even mid-tier falcons receive better treatment than the average blacksmith. Some noble families kept 3 or 4 falcons each with distinct care schedules. You ever hear of a peasant with a scheduled nap time? Exactly. Even the legal system favored these birds. In some areas, harming a noble's falcon could result in harsher punishment than harming a tenant. Think about that for a second. If you accidentally threw a rock and hit a lord's bird, you might lose a hand. If someone hit you with a rock, it was probably considered your fault for standing in the way. You sneak a glance back at Alderaan now. He's blinking slowly, like he knows all this. His claws are clean, his eyes sharp, his feathers trimmed with care, and just the faintest shimmer of oil. The falconer leans in and whispers, "You'll fly tomorrow, only if the wind's kind." You once asked for a day off during storm season and were told rain builds character. Honestly, you're not even jealous anymore. You're impressed, because clearly, falcons didn't just fly through medieval skies, they soared through the social ladder too. With silk-lined boxes, curated diets, and healthcare that would make modern clinics blush. 3 soft chuckles before you doze. That falcon has seen more physicians in a month than you've seen in your lifetime. If reincarnation is real, you're putting falcon as your top request. You tried to whistle at the cook once got slapped. Falcon does it, gets a steak. The sun is higher, now streaming down through narrow slits in the barn roof as you shovel hay like your life depends on it. Because in a way, it kind of does. But then your attention shifts. Something more interesting is happening near the stables. It's bath time. No, not for you. Don't be ridiculous. For the falcon, Alderaan is perched like royalty on a smooth wooden stand, head tilted with quiet judgment, as his falconer gently prepares a shallow basin of water. Not just any water, this is spring water, left to sit overnight, so the chill wouldn't shock the bird's humors. A few herbs float on the surface, sage lavender, and a suspiciously expensive sprig of thyme. You squint from a distance. Pretty sure your last bath involved river mud and a slippery eel that didn't ask permission. The falcon is lifted with both hands, like a sacred relic. The falconer coos softly, dipping the feet, letting the water trickle along the wings. He massages the bird's chest, yes, chest massage, while speaking in low tones. You can't help but wonder, is this bird more relaxed than you've ever been? Probably. But the real kicker, after the bath, the falcon is towel dried with linen cloth warmed over coals. Warmed. You dry yourself with whatever's dry enough not to mold. And if it does mold, A builds immunity. There's a station nearby with small jars of ointment resins, oils a little pot, labeled to ease wing stiffness in cold seasons. The smell is divine. You briefly consider pretending to be a falcon just to get a rub down. This entire ritual happens every 3 days. Not just for cleaning. Oh no, it's for feather maintenance. Apparently, if a falcon's feathers become dull, it affects their morale. That's adorable. You haven't seen your reflection in months, and honestly, it's probably for the best. Now you're watching the next step, feather alignment. It's called feather stroking, and it's done with the back of a goose quill dipped in almond oil. Almond oil for a bird. Meanwhile, your hands are cracked from the cold, and your nails are just guesses now. You're told not to get too close, but you linger anyway. You hear the falconer mutter something about how Alderaan needs sunlight, so he gently walks the perch outside to a bright patch of grass. Sunbathing apparently helps balance the vital airs inside a falcon's body. You squint up at the same sun and try to remember the last time you sat in the grass without someone yelling at you to go fetch something. It gets weirder. Some noble households even built glass aviaries, glass, so that falcons could receive light in winter without the chill. You've been sleeping under a leaky thatch roof for so long that you're pretty sure you've grown moss. Now, the bird gets a snack, lightly poached dove meat, and 2 drops of honeyed wine. Your snack, the stale end of a barley loaf that broke your last molar. You glance around. No one's watching. You try to copy the falcon's posture, chest lifted head high. It feels good, actually. Empowering. Regal. Then your stomach growls and your peasant reality returns like a hammer. The care doesn't stop at daylight either. At night, Alderaan is brought to a special perch inside the manor. His perch is padded with wool. Yours is straw, so old it technically qualifies as compost. And here's a detail that might make you laugh. Some falconers sang lullabies. No joke. Gentle melodies to soothe the bird before sleep. You drift off to the sound of coughing and rats playing tag under the floorboards. You once heard a monk say that the way a society treats its animals reveals its soul. You wonder what it means when falcons get bedtime songs and you get yelled at for snoring. 3 soft chuckles to settle your thoughts. That falcon has more oils on his feathers than you have in your entire diet. His bathwater's filtered. Your drinking water comes with bonus frogs. Alderaan's perch is padded. Your pillow is an old turnip. You know it's serious when the falcon sneezes. Not a big dramatic sneeze, mind you. Just a tiny twitch of feathers, a delicate shake of the head, and a soft hef-hef-hef-okay. But immediately, the entire courtyard enters a quiet panic. The falconer goes pale. The assistant, yes, there's an assistant rushes to fetch the bird's logbook. And someone runs to find the local herbalist. Because when a falcon gets the sniffles in the Middle Ages, it's practically a national emergency. You, of course, sneezed 3 times this morning and were told to drink warm beer and stop being dramatic. They gently carry Alderaan into a shaded corner, lay him on a velvet cloth, and open the log. Yes, the log. Each bird has its own health journal, complete with feather condition reports, stool notes, weight fluctuations, and behavioral quirks. You once broke a toe, and the most documentation anyone did was shouting, "Walk it off." The falconer scribbles notes quickly. Slight nasal moisture. Reduced flight enthusiasm. Minor wing stiffness. If you had a personal medical file, it would read something like, tired, dirty, still somehow alive. Alderaan is now getting a full checkup. Beak pressure normal. Eye clarity excellent. Talon curve satisfactorily vicious. Meanwhile, you think your left eye hasn't blinked properly since last winter, but no one's inspecting that. The herbalist arrives a stout woman with 10 pouches on her belt and a falcon feather brooch. She inspects the bird nods solemnly and mutters something about imbalanced humors and autumn dampness. She prescribes a tonic ground fennel honey and a touch of long pepper steeped in goat's milk. You, however, were once given the same goat's milk, just straight from the goat, still warm. The bird's perch is moved indoors, away from drafts. Windows are shuttered. A little fire is lit in the corner to keep his lungs supple. You warm your hands nearby and are promptly told to step away. It's for the bird. Of course it is. Later in the day, the falcon is offered a menu of soft meats. He sniffs, rejects the quail, and selects the sparrow. The chef looks relieved. You ate something this morning that may have been meat, but you're still not sure, and frankly afraid to ask. This isn't an isolated event. In noble households, a falcon showing signs of illness could trigger weeks of monitoring fasting schedules and even spiritual intervention. Some monks specialized in bird blessings. Yes, holy blessings for feathered creatures. You were told last year your stomach pains were probably punishment for thinking too much. Now here's a wild side note. There were even cases where medieval falconers consulted the stars to determine the bird's health outlook. That's right, astrological forecasts for feather conditions. Mars in retrograde. Better delay that flight. You, meanwhile, just kind of hope the moon doesn't fall. The debate among scholars today is whether this meticulous care was rooted in genuine affection or pure investment protection. After all, falcons were extremely valuable, like you could trade this bird for a small castle valuable. But even so, the detail and gentleness they received, it blurs the line between utility and love, because there's something about the way the falconer strokes Alderaan's neck, the way the cook whispers bon appetit before serving, that tells you this isn't just about money. This is devotion. Possibly unhealthy devotion, but devotion nonetheless. Meanwhile, you start coughing. No one notices? Classic. So you lean on your broom, watching the noble patient rest on his little pillow. He blinks slowly, as if to say, "Peasant, please." And you, just for fun, try blinking back with regal authority. It doesn't land. 3 little chuckles to flutter with your dreams. The falcon has a better file cabinet than your local lord's tax office. You get assigned chores. He gets assigned scent mood stabilizers. You're lucky if someone notices your fever. The falcon gets a fire pit. The sun hasn't even fully risen, and the falconer is already flipping through Alderaan's health log, lips pursed brow, furrowed like he's reviewing a royal treaty. Today's note: slight tension in left wing. reduced glide precision. You once tripped in a hole limped for a month, and the only note made was someone yelling, "Look where you're going, fool. It's checkup day again." You watch as the falcon is carefully placed on a padded perch under a slanted ray of morning light. The breeze is light, the setting ideal. A scribe appears. That's right, a person with quill and parchment, because this falcon's vitals are tracked in real time. It's like a medieval Fitbit, but with more bird poop. There's a small scale to check his weight. It's balanced with polished stones for accuracy. Meanwhile, you were once weighed using a counterbalance of firewood, and someone still accused you of cheating. The falcon opens his wings, briefly showing off what looks like a perfect arc. The falconer nods. Good, good. But let's not push flight today. Oh, we're taking rest days now. You haven't taken a rest day since the last plague, and even then it was more of a forced horizontal position than anything restful. Now comes the part that stings a little more, the falcon's daily vitality blend. It's a mixture of quail, egg yolk, wild berries, crushed fennel, and a drop of honey. Served in a hand-carved wooden bowl. You literally ate something yesterday you found in a puddle and still aren't sure if it was food or a soft rock. The scribe notes the bird's appetite. Excellent vigor. Slight beak hesitation, likely due to wind. Your appetite is noted by no one. Ever. Later, a stable boy approaches with a small cloth pouch. It contains dried herbs to hang above the falcon's perch for scent balance. Specifically, a mix of lavender mint and a bit of dried orange peel. You have a dried rat hanging in your ceiling rafter that was supposed to be a warning to other rats. It hasn't worked, but the detail that really gets you is the schedule. Yes, the falcon has a routine. He's flown every third day, if the weather permits, followed by a rest day and a grooming session. On market days, he fasts to stay light. If a hunt is scheduled, he's given a high-protein meal the night before. And during the cold months, he's wrapped at night in a wool-lined cloth with his name stitched into the edge. You're lucky if someone remembers you have a name. You hear the falconer whisper again. Today, no sparrows. He prefers dove when the air is dry. You blink. Preferences. Imagine that. Meanwhile, you once expressed a preference for fewer rocks in your bread and were told beggars chew what they're given. Falcons even get to molt in peace. That's their annual feather shedding process. When it happens, they're removed from duty, placed in quieter quarters, and given rest and special food to support the transition. You once lost hair from stress, and someone suggested rubbing onion on your scalp. Scholars today have found journals, actual detailed bird diaries kept by falconers. They include observations like slight melancholy upon hearing thunder or refused food, may miss former companion. These emotional notes were taken seriously. You got sad last winter, and someone called you lazy and told you to marry a widow to cheer up. The most amazing part, some birds had more than one caregiver, a team, like medieval avian avengers. One cleaned the perch, one prepared meals, one tracked behavior, one monitored flight posture. You carry water firewood and play groomers all by yourself. Now some modern historians debate whether this level of attention was standard or only reserved for the elite falcons of kings and high lords. There's argument, certainly. But even mid-level nobles cared deeply. After all, a falcon wasn't just an animal. It was a living emblem of honor, nobility, and masculinity. A sick falcon. That was like having a dented sword or muddy boots to a court ball. You hear a bell ring. It's Alderon's lunchtime. Pigeon thigh, minced lark liver, and oddly enough, a pinch of ground almond for texture. You're chewing on some leftover barley that tastes suspiciously like dust. You sigh and look at him again. Head-tilted feathers, immaculate eyes, sharp, perfectly healthy. You say to yourself, not without a hint of awe, that bird's living better than my cousin, who married into minor nobility. 3 tiny giggles to keep your dreams feather light. Alderon's breakfast cost more than your yearly rent. You once had a schedule, then the rooster died, and no one remembered. The bird has a massage slot. You have a backache from the concept of stairs. It's mid-afternoon now. The sky is that perfect kind of blue you never get to enjoy, because someone always needs water fetched or hay turned. But not Alderon. He's lounging in his favorite corner of the garden wings, partially outstretched feathers catching the light like polished armor. A soft breeze ruffles the leaves. Someone whispers, "Don't let it hit his face." You blink. Is the wind being managed for a bird? Yes. Yes, it is. Alderon, you learn, is displaying what falconers call weather fatigue, which sounds suspiciously like I don't like Mondays, but in bird. So naturally, he's being treated for it. The falconer wraps him in a light cloth, tucks him under a parasol, and brings out a small bowl of warm, herb-infused water to sip from. You sip from a cracked jug that may or may not have had a frog in it earlier. And then comes the real show, a visit from the court astrologer. Why? Because they're trying to figure out if the stars are affecting Alderon's mood. You suppress a laugh. You once asked if the moon could make crops grow faster and were told moons for poetry, not potatoes. The astrologer looks serious, muttering something about Mars being too close to Saturn and how it might disrupt the bird's inner fire. He suggests postponing any hunts for the next 3 days. The falconer nods solemnly. The scribe, yes, the one from earlier, is taking this all down. You sneeze. No one flinches. The falcon's diet is altered for cosmic balance. Less game meat, more herbal mash. You overhear the words digestive ease, liver flow, and your favorite to calm the feathers of the soul. You try that line later on the kitchen maid when she asks why you haven't cleaned the well. She isn't impressed. Now, you're watching the falcon stretch one wing lazily, and everyone around him reacts like he's just quoted Aristotle. Did you see that extension? Beautiful form, says one. His balance is returning, another adds, nodding as if discussing a royal heir. You kind of want to start stretching your arms just to see if someone praises your form. Spoiler, they won't. The falconer now begins a series of diagnostic feather strokes. Each movement has a name: the C curve, the wind gauge, the tail sway. You once scratched your back with a pitchfork and were told you looked possessed. Apparently, Alderon's right flight feather is slightly dull. A concoction of beeswax and rosemary is prepared to bring back its shine and vigor. You're 90% sure the bird is getting conditioner. You still wash your hair with gray rainwater and panic. As the sun sets, Alderon is brought inside not because it's cold, but because too much moonlight disorients his inner compass. You've spent your whole life sleeping under the moon, and the only thing disoriented is your sense of optimism. Before bed, Alderon gets a final treatment, a soft cooing lullaby, and a rhythmic combing of his head feathers with a carved bone pick. This apparently mimics the grooming of wild falcons and helps him feel seen. You once asked someone to scratch your back and got handed a stick. And here's the quirky footnote. For tonight, some medieval falconers genuinely believed falcons experienced dreams. Not just random ones, but prophetic dreams. There are stories of noblemen recording their birds' sleeping patterns, hoping to interpret signs. You can't even get someone to interpret your chest pain. 3 gentle chuckles to drift off with. Alderaan has a horoscope. You have house chores and seasonal existentialism. His dreams are considered divine. Yours involve falling off carts. The falcon gets bedtime songs. You get told to stop breathing so loudly. It's morning again, and while your body creaks like an old door every time you move, Alderaan is already halfway through his spa routine. Today is Claw Day. Yes, the falcon has a designated day for talon maintenance. You once cut your toenails with a scythe. By accident, the falconer brings out a tiny set of tools, miniature files, pumice stone, and a vial of lemon oil for shine. The process is delicate. Each talon is filed down ever so slightly, just enough to keep them sharp without encouraging overgrowth. Afterwards, the feet are massaged with a soft wax made from goose fat and crushed marjoram. For circulation, your own feet haven't felt warm since last October. Alderaan doesn't struggle. He's clearly done this before. He lifts one foot, then the other, closing his eyes slightly, like a noble enjoying his 4th cup of wine. You're trying not to make a face, but it's hard when the falcon gets more pedicure than the entire village combined. Nearby, someone is preparing his living quarters, a private mew, lined with clean straw lavender sachets and a woven mat embroidered with his name. You once embroidered a blanket for yourself. Someone stole it. Now, it's a curtain in the bakehouse. The falconer explains to a visiting noble's son that this particular mew faces east to catch the healing morning light and is free from drafts that affect feather mood. You're affected by drafts too. No one adjusts your sleeping corner. Let's talk bedding. Alderaan gets his straw changed every 2 days. It's checked for moisture pests and emotional residue. You sleep on straw so old it's legally considered a relative. In the corner of the mew is a perch with different textures, one covered in soft wool for lounging, one with sandpaper for claw tension release. You tried lying on sand once. The rash lasted 3 weeks. Later, Alderaan receives a visit from the Master of Hawks, a high-ranking falcon expert. This man has traveled Europe studying bird posture and feather alignment like a medieval avian chiropractor. He hums as he inspects Alderaan's wings, then declares, he's showing confidence again. You can feel it in the scapular tension. You try to show confidence in your shoulders and immediately pull something. By now, the other birds in the aviary are getting attention too. There's a hierarchy among them, but all are treated better than your neighbor Bertram, who once bled for 3 days before anyone noticed. One falcon is undergoing emotional reintegration after being startled by a cat. He's been given a walnut-scented cushion and a break from duty. You saw a cat yesterday too. It bit you. And here's the most baffling detail: some falcons get visitors. Nobles, especially young ladies, are brought in to coo, admire, and compliment the bird. One girl gently kissed Alderaan's beak, whispering, "Sleep well, fierce one." You once smiled at her and got mind your place. Falcons were often symbols of nobility, grace, and divine favor. People believed they were sensitive to energy tone and music. Some even claimed falcons could detect lies, essentially medieval lie detectors with wings. You're starting to wonder if maybe you were a falcon in a past life, and this is karma for something you did. And yes, there were perfumes. Special oils rubbed on feathers, not only to protect from mites, but to make them smell pleasant. You smell like turnips permanently. 3 silly thoughts to tuck under your pillow. Alderon's room has better feng shui than your entire house. His foot massage cost more than your village priest's robe. The falcon gets love letters. You got one from tax collectors. It's another clear, crisp day, perfect for flying, or so the falconer says. Alderon is perched proudly on a gloved hand chest, puffed head high. He looks like a general about to address an army. You look like you've been sneezed on by a goat, twice. Today is a hunting day, but not just any outing. It's a ceremonial hunt. Which means Alderon gets his feathers brushed with care, his talons inspected and polished, and yes, a tiny crest-embroidered hood strapped gently over his head for dramatic effect. He looks mysterious, elegant, like a bird with secrets and a full dental plan. The hunting party assembles a mixture of noblemen retainers and people who just want to be near prestige. You're not officially included, but someone needs to carry the snacks. That someone is, you guessed it, you. Before setting off, a small team gathers to review the falcon's flight condition. The wind is checked with ribbons, and someone sprinkles ash to test airflow. Alderon is weighed once more. You've lost 10 pounds since spring, but no one's weighed you since that time you fell in the wheat bin. As the hunt begins, all eyes are on the falcon. Trumpets sound actual trumpets, and Alderon is released. He ascends into the sky like an arrow made of gold. The crowd sighs. Magnificent, someone breathes. You're pretty sure no one's ever said that about you. Except maybe that one time you carried 2 buckets at once. Maybe. The quarry today is a wild hare. But let's be honest, it's not about the hare. It's about the display. The falcon's form, his discipline, the curve of his dive. Every flap of his wings is observed, admired, and later recorded. You once ran after a runaway chicken for 40 minutes and ended up in a pond. No one admired your form. After the hunt, Alderon is gently retrieved, his beak cleaned, and his breathing monitored. You're out of breath too from running after the horses, but no one hands you a damp cloth and a congratulatory fig. The bird's performance is discussed at length. Slight delay in the stoop, someone says. Maybe the air was thick today, another offers. We'll adjust his meal tonight. Less heaviness. You overhear this while chewing on a piece of bread so dense it might qualify as building material. Back at the manor, Alderon is fed by hand. His reward is carefully portioned and gently warmed. Meanwhile, you're fighting off a goose for a crust. The falcon is then led to a quiet room for post-hunt recovery. There's warm water, a soft towel, and calming sounds. Someone's actually playing a lute. You have calming sounds too, rats scratching in the pantry. Later, there's an odd moment. One of the noblewomen offers her ring to the falcon to peck, a symbol of respect. The falcon tilts his head, considers, then pecks once, lightly. Everyone applauds. You stubbed your toe earlier, and no one even looked up. Here's the academic debate, whispered in scholarly halls. Today were falcons pampered because of symbolic reverence, or because they truly were seen as beings of higher nature? Some argue they represented divine will. Others say it was pure ego projection, nobles grooming birds the way they wish they could be treated. Either way, the birds got the better end of the deal. And just to top off your day, a bard in the hall is now composing a short song about Alderon's dive. A song you once tried to hum while sweeping and got shushed. 3 soft chuckles to rest your tired arms. Alderaan has a theme song. You get background yelling. His breath is monitored. You wheeze in silence. The bird gets applause for pecking a ring. You got in trouble for sneezing near one. Night falls gently over the manor, cloaking the stables in a hush of straw-scented quiet. You've just finished sweeping the courtyard for the 3rd time today. No one really asked. But it was either that or listen to Sir Gregory talk about his toe fungus again. You lean on your broom and glance toward the far end of the estate where the Falcons' quarters sit beneath a beautifully tiled roof. Some say it used to be a guest house. Then a particularly handsome bird moved in. Inside, Alderaan is receiving his nightly care. Not being put away, mind you. Care. A slow, ritualistic wind-down. The falconer dims the lanterns. A cloth soaked in chamomile steam is placed just under the perch to soften the breath. You've never had chamomile. You're not entirely sure what it is. You just know it isn't what's growing between your toes. Tonight, Alderaan is inspected one final time. A feather near his tail is slightly askew. The falconer clicks his tongue and reaches for the feather kit. Yes, a feather kit with tiny ivory tools for smoothing, aligning, and trimming. It's more detailed than the knife you use for both cutting bread and cleaning dirt from under your nails. He gently adjusts the feather, then gives it a light dab of oil to prevent brittle edge. You haven't had oil since last Christmas, when someone dropped a candle and the puddle was technically shareable. Then comes the bedding. Alderaan's perch is lined with a fresh square of padded wool, fluffed by hand and gently scented with dried mint. You curl up in a corner of the barn later with a potato sack someone used to carry fish. Alderaan's sack once came from Venice. What you notice most, though, is the quiet, the calm, the respect. The falcon is bowed to, literally. Not deeply, but still a small nod of acknowledgement. You bowed once to the baker's wife. She threw cabbage at you, and as you linger, you hear something that surprises you, a voice reading aloud. Yes, someone is reading to the bird. It's not Shakespeare, he hasn't been born yet. But it's a poem about the wind, composed by a nobleman who believes birds understand the language of air. You tried reciting a poem once. Someone thought you were under a curse. As the reading continues, Alderaan blinks slowly, feathers rising and settling with a sleepy rhythm. A warm cloth is laid gently over part of his perch, not for heat, but to anchor the dream flow. You put a blanket over your head and hope the mice don't run across your face again. Then the most baffling part, the falcon's dreams are logged. Wing flick during stanza 3, describe notes. Possible response to emotional tone. If you twitch in your sleep, someone kicks you and tells you to stop hogging the hay. By candlelight, the falconer finally sets down a small tray, a nighttime nibble. A tidbit of partridge, sliced to bite-sized perfection. You once got up at midnight and ate half a turnip. You weren't proud, and now Alderaan's breathing evens out. He shifts slightly, beak tucked beneath his wing. The room smells faintly of lavender mint and something warm and sweet. You take one last look before heading off to your corner of the barn. He's not just sleeping, he's recharging. You tiptoe out, not because you'll wake him, but because it feels rude to stomp. And here's tonight's odd historical gem. In some manners, falcons were believed to absorb dreams. That's right. Noble families sometimes kept them near sleeping chambers, thinking they could trap nightmares in the air. You're wondering if one could trap yours? Particularly the one where you keep falling into a vat of oatmeal. 3 soft giggles to float into your own feathers. Alderaan gets a bedtime story. You get bedtime warnings. He has a dream log. You have mysterious bruises. Someone fluffed his pillow. You are the pillow. Dawn breaks in layers of soft orange and smoke from the baker's chimney. You haven't had breakfast, but Alderaan has. He's halfway through a warm meal of braised dove hearts and something called digestive gravel. Yes, that's real tiny bits of mineral stone to aid a falcon's internal balance. You've been chewing the same piece of barley crust since yesterday, and the only internal balance you're maintaining is not fainting. This morning, Alderaan looks off. Not ill, not injured, just a touch sluggish, the falconer says, with a grave face. A moment later, a page is sent sprinting down the path. Within the hour, the falcon's personal apothecary is in the courtyard. Yes, his own apothecary. He arrives in a cart filled with little wooden drawers, tiny glass bottles, and a goat. You're not sure why the goat is here, but you assume it's either for medicinal milk or emotional support. Either way, it's clearly not your goat. The apothecary listens to Alderaan's breathing, examines his stool. Yes, falcon stool is regularly observed and charted, and asks about recent emotional stimuli. The falconer says Alderaan may have been startled by the chapel bell. This prompts a full evaluation of auditory trauma. You were once startled by a bull and knocked into a cart. You were told to stop being dramatic. The apothecary prescribes a mild tincture of wine honey and powdered rosehip to be administered in drops. He also suggests removing loud colors from the falcon's environment. Someone immediately takes down a bright blue banner nearby. You tried removing loud colors once someone punched you and said the socks were a gift. The bird is now placed on light duty. That means no hunting, no flying, and minimal social interaction for 3 days. You haven't had 3 days off since the cow got stuck in the village well, and you had to climb in after it. This whole event is recorded in the falcon's health journal with dates, times, symptoms, wind speed, and moon phase. Your last injury was unrecorded, but probably deserved. You follow the apothecary back to his cart. He's adjusting tiny glass vials, carefully labeling one for mood restoration. You wonder if you could sneak a drop just out of curiosity. You once tried sniffing a flower and sneezed for an hour. As the day warms up, Alderaan is moved to his recovery perch. It's in a shaded part of the garden, surrounded by flowering herbs, and this is real, a tiny fountain that burbles gently to restore calm. You have a bucket of water in your corner that burbles only when it's leaking, and then comes the visit from the nobleman himself. Lord Benedict arrives in person to see how Alderaan is doing. He speaks in hushed tones, approaches slowly, and even offers a prayer. When you had a tooth pulled with a string and a rock, Lord Benedict said, "Be more careful." The Lord declares today a quiet day in honor of Alderaan's healing. No shouting, no hammering, no dogs in the courtyard. You haven't had a quiet day since you learned how to talk. Some falcons, they say, are sensitive to disruptions in harmony. Music bell tones, even the way someone walks near their perch. This is why, in some households, guests were taught proper bird etiquette before being allowed near a falcon. You weren't even taught how to hold a spoon, and let's not forget grooming during recovery. Alderaan gets a wing combing and a light dusting of sage powder to keep spiritual pathways open. You once found sage in the kitchen and tried to rub it on your arm. The cook chased you with a spoon. Now here's your scholarly tidbit for tonight. Recent historical analysis of noble household budgets suggests that some families spent more on falcon care than on their human servants. Medicine, feed, travel, housing, all charted and prioritized. In one record, a lord paid 3 coins for bird ointment and half a coin for a carpenter with a broken thumb. The courtyard is unusually tense today. Alderaan, regal as ever, is perched silently, but there's a certain droop to his wings, a sluggishness in his blink. You recognize the signs instantly. You've seen them before, in people. The bird is unwell, not a little tired, not slightly peckish. No, this is serious. And medieval nobles, as we've now firmly established, do not take falcon illness lightly. If you broke a rib, you'd be offered wine and told to walk it off. But if Alderaan so much as looks sideways at his food, they cancel dinner. The falconer rushes to prepare a cushion of soft wool, scented with lemon balm and thyme. You once used moss as a pillow. It had bugs in it. The manor goes into quiet emergency mode. A second falconer is summoned. The herbalist is fetched from her cottage with a donkey-drawn cart full of plants bottles and what looks suspiciously like a portable brazier. She sets up a treatment station next to the falcon's perch. There are hot compresses. There are whisper chant remedies. You're pretty sure she just gave the bird a steam facial. Meanwhile, you've had a mystery cough for 3 seasons. The baker says it's probably wind ghosts. Very scientific. The diagnosis: possibly digestive imbalance caused by underflighted melancholy. The treatment includes adjusted rations, a poultice of warm elderberry paste applied to the claws for grounding, and a full day of silence. Someone starts covering mirrors, lest they disturb the falcon's sense of self. You accidentally looked into a mirror last week and fainted. Now comes the vigil. That's right, a vigil. A watch rota is created. Falconer squires, and even the Lord Steward take turns staying with Alderaan through the night. They'll observe his breathing, listen for unusual coos, and ensure he stays warm. You once passed out in the barn. A cat walked over your face. No rota. And if this sounds extreme, well, it gets better. Someone suggests calling in a traveling bird physic. That's a physician who specializes in falcons. These people were rare, expensive, and treated like magical beings. Think bird whisperer, meets doctor, meets spiritual counselor. You saw a traveling leech merchant once. He bit someone. The Lord agrees. The bird physic is summoned. A boy on horseback rides out with an urgent message, while another prepares the guest chamber yes for the bird doctor. You're told not to breathe on the guest towels. You sneak a glance into the record book. Every detail is logged. Droppings color, light gray, concerning blink rate slower than usual. Appetite refused liver twice, and general posture, slightly slouched eyes half-masked. You once fell, face first into a bucket, and someone noted it with "he'll be fine." And now the quietest moment, a priest arrives. No one says it out loud, but there's a chance this is serious. A short blessing is whispered over Alderaan. You cough in the background. The priest ignores it. You offer to translate for the bird. They ignore that too. As the sun begins to set, the manor glows, with candles not for people, but for calm ambiance. Someone plays a soft tune on a lyre just outside the mew. The herbalist waves sage smoke in gentle spirals. You accidentally breathe some in and sneeze loudly. You are once again escorted out. Still, you peek through the wooden slats. The falcon breathes slowly, eyes closed. Blankets tucked, temperature monitored, mood stable. Someone whispers, he is holding steady. You hold your breath. Not because you care well, maybe a little, but because the room is so still, you don't want to ruin it. Here's tonight's strange but true historical tidbit. Some noble households kept falcon-sized stretchers. Yes, tiny stretchers with velvet padding. For medical transport, you've been dragged on a cart full of onions. 3 calm chuckles for this contemplative evening. Alderaan gets a candlelit vigil. You get told to work faster in the dark. He has a recovery playlist. You have rats that harmonize. The bird has a specialist writing in. You once got a diagnosis from a toothless man named Clive. Morning comes slowly. The air is thick with anticipation and time-scented steam. You shuffle past the aviary, pretending to sweep, but really like everyone else you're waiting. Waiting to see if Alderaan, divine delicate 4-taloned Alderaan, has made it through the night. Spoiler, he has. And not only that, he stretches his wings. Not dramatically, not all at once, but just enough to send a flurry of cautious relief through the courtyard. The falconer exhales. The scribe lights a candle. The herbalist smiles into her mug of steeped hawthorn bark and declares his spirit is returning. You try to smile too, but someone hands you a mop. The bird Physic arrives shortly after, wrapped in a wool cloak stitched with embroidered feathers. He carries a wooden case strapped with leather and mystery. His name is Master Yiel. He doesn't bow to anyone except the falcon. Honestly, fair enough. You trail him from a respectful distance as he enters Alderaan's mew. He doesn't speak for a full minute, just observes. He watches the bird blink, watches him shift one claw. He lifts a single tail feather and examines it in the sunlight. Not molting, he says softly, but retaining tension in the plume structure. You once had tension in your shoulder for 3 months. No one cared. They gave you a bucket and a shrug. Gilles opens his case. Inside are neat rows of tools and tinctures. Tweezers made from whalebone, salves in tiny clay pots, a set of feather combs that look like miniature harps. He selects a clear vial and dabs a drop of rose oil mixed with cypress resin beneath Alderaan's beak. This will invite breath ease, he says. You've been wheezing since spring, and the only thing anyone invited you to was more work. The inspection continues. He checks talon temperature wing symmetry, even sniffs the bird's breath. Yes, sniffs. Then he steps back and delivers his verdict. He is stable. He may even fly by week's end. The entire courtyard exhales like it's Christmas, and tax day just got canceled. To celebrate a feast is declared not for you, obviously. For Alderaan, a fresh dish is prepared: minced quail, soft barley, mash a drizzle of goose fat, and just for good measure, a single grape peeled. You try peeling a grape once. You were told that's what rich people do before they die. Alderaan eats slowly with dignity. Each bite is recorded by the scribe. You ate half an onion earlier and cried. No one noticed. Later, the falconer begins the process of post-crisis bonding. It's a careful routine, soft-talking rhythmic movement, low whistles. Alderaan leans slightly into his touch. You leaned into someone once. They moved. And then comes the part that almost makes you drop your broom. They present Alderaan with a new hood. It's hand-stitched, lined with silk, embroidered with gold thread. His name is inscribed along the edge in Old French calligraphy. You don't even own shoes with both soles. The hood is a symbol of rebirth, of recovery, of prestige. When placed over Alderaan's head, he tilts slightly, as if acknowledging the ceremony. There's quiet applause. The falconer sheds a tear. You once lost a toe to frostbite, and someone called it character development. Oh, and there's a song. A new verse is added to Alderaan's growing ballad. The bard works quickly, rhyming soar with valor and something about feathered grace. You try humming it later while washing dishes. Someone throws a turnip. Your historical curiosity of the evening: in some households, each falcon had a personal name, a heraldic crest, and wait for it, a designated heir. That's right. If a favored falcon died, the lord would breed or purchase a successor with similar markings. You once tried to replace a chicken and were told nothing's the same anymore. 3 soft chuckles to soothe your humble soul. Alderaan got a gold-stitched hood. You got a hand-me-down sock hat from someone named Edith. He got a song. You got blamed for the rain. He has an official heir. You're still not sure who your real uncle is. The manor is buzzing with low-key celebration. Alderaan has officially rejoined the living, as the falconer puts it, and the courtyard feels a little brighter. Someone polished his perch. A child brought him a painted rock. You brought him water once. They made you leave because you breathed too unevenly. As part of his reintegration, because of course there's a reintegration plan, Alderaan is placed on a revised training schedule. Not too strenuous, not too idle. We must honor the recovery arc, says the falconer, as if describing a knight back from war. You once sprained your back and were told to stop whining before lunch. This morning's session is simple sunning, some wing stretches, and mood observation. Yes, they're tracking his mood. The falconer has a small wax tablet where he scribbles wings, relaxed gaze, alert tail, gently fanned, likely content. You're experiencing what can only be described as bread-based malaise. No one's taking notes. Now comes something unusual, a visit from another noble's falcon. Her name is Mirabelle. She arrives in a softwood cage lined with satin carried by a gentleman who bows more to her than to the baron. Alderaan fluffs his chest feathers. It's very formal. You watch from behind a barrel, chewing something that might be a beet. This is more than a social call. It's part of Alderaan's emotional stimulus therapy. Apparently interacting with another falcon can aid in reestablishing natural instincts. You once tried social interaction. It resulted in a dropped pie and a lifelong feud. The 2 falcons are placed on adjacent perches. They don't speak, obviously, but there's eye contact, tiny movements, feather shifts. It's like watching a Jane Austen subplot with beaks. Meanwhile, the scribe logs every blink, paused, gaze, slight talon twitch. No signs of agitation. You once blinked too slowly and were accused of sleeping standing up. Afterward, the falconer brings Alderaan a stimulation treat. This consists of a half-dried fig rolled in ground walnut and a pinch of powdered rose petal. You're still picking hay out of your teeth from last night. And here's where things get truly odd. Mirabelle's handler offers to exchange oils. That is a few drops of the blend used in Mirabelle's feather grooming to be tested on Alderon's shoulder plume. For compatibility, it's like medieval aromatherapy dating. You once borrowed soap from the stable boy. Everyone talked about it for a week. They dab the oil gently and observe his reaction. He flutters once, then settles. This is recorded as responsive, but not resistant. You made that noise last week when someone dropped a ladle near your foot. No one cared. Later, the birds are given a joint sun perch at a respectful distance. There's even a cloth screen to reduce sensory overload. You haven't had privacy since the bucket closet started leaking. In noble circles, falcons were often paired not just for breeding, but for social balance. A falcon who had emotional pairing was said to perform better. You're paired with a guy named Emmerich, who chews with his mouth open and smells like damp wool. But you do learn something. Some falcons, if separated from their bonded companion, would refuse to fly. They'd sulk, starve, even pluck their own feathers. The falconer says they understand absence more deeply than we do. You nod, pretending not to take it personally. The idea that falcons had inner lives, emotions, preferences, longings, isn't modern imagination. It's straight from the manuscripts. Some even had poems written to them. Love poems. In one, a knight calls his falcon, "My winged mirror." You've been called the skinny broom guy. As sunset paints the walls, Gold, Alderon, and Mirabelle are gently covered with soft hoods and led to their separate chambers. There's talk of reintroducing flight training soon, but not yet. Recovery, the falconer says, must not be rushed. 3 gentle giggles before the dreams swoop in. Alderon has a therapist and a girlfriend. You have a shovel. He gets to bond by moonlight. You get to argue over laundry rags. They swapped oils. You're still using leftover candle wax as moisturizer. It's flight day. Not just any flight. The first flight since Alderon's health scare. The manor is practically holding its breath. Even the pigeons are watching from the roof, like scandalized neighbors. You were told to stand back, don't disturb the air currents. You're fairly certain your existence disturbs someone's currents daily. Alderon is carried out on a leather-gloved arm, his golden hood still covering his eyes. He looks majestic. Slightly annoyed, maybe, but majestic. The falconer speaks in a low voice, something between encouragement and romantic poetry. You are the wind's memory, he whispers. You once called a goose fluffy friend. It bit you. A small gathering has formed nobles' attendants, even 2 scribes today, just in case the flight inspires parallel descriptions. One scribe is here for technical data. The other is here to capture the emotion of the moment. You wrote a haiku once about potatoes, and were told to keep your thoughts to yourself. The hood comes off. Alderon blinks. The wind lifts. A silence falls over the courtyard so deep you can hear a worm sneezing in the garden. Then he lifts off. It's a smooth, clean launch. Wings outstretched, feathers catching the light like they've been polished with starlight. He circles once, then twice. He climbs, then dives, then hovers mid-air like a question mark with claws. Everyone exhales at the same time. The falconer's shoulders drop. One of the scribes actually wipes away a tear. You've done plenty of hard things. You once climbed into a well to save a goat. No one cried. The goat peed on you. Different kind of moment. Alderaan returns after several minutes, gliding down with lazy grace. He lands on the glove with a small hop, like he never left the ground. The falconer offers him a soft strip of meat. He eats with what can only be described as elegant confidence. The recovery is complete. But now that he's back, things don't just go back to normal. Oh no. Alderaan's post-recovery status comes with enhancements. First, his perch is upgraded. No longer just wool-lined. Now it includes a cushion made from imported flax, embroidered with a pattern of clouds, for symbolic encouragement. You sleep on straw you suspect once belonged to a pig. Second, he receives a new care schedule, a mix of stimulating activities and mindful observation periods. Apparently, falcons benefit from seasonal enrichment. You asked for a day off to pick mushrooms once, and were told you didn't have the face for leisure. And finally, brace yourself, he gets a portrait. Yes, a painter is brought in, a real one, with brushes, oils, and a small folding stool. Alderaan is posed next to a potted lemon tree, wings slightly raised, looking both fierce and contemplative. The artist murmurs about capturing his inner light. You once photobombed a tapestry and were woven out in the final draft. The portrait will hang in the Great Hall. Underneath it, a small brass plaque with his name, his titles, Warden of the Eastern Skies, because of course, and the date of his first flight back. You try posing in front of the chicken coop later with a stick and a serious expression. Nothing happens. Still, there's something comforting in knowing that even in a world of plagues and superstition, where barbers double as surgeons and soup is both meal and medicine, something was getting care that bordered on reverent. Ridiculous maybe, but deeply human in its devotion. And in a strange way, you feel it too. You smile up at the sky where Alderaan flew. A streak of cloud passes slowly. Maybe you're just a humble stable hand, probably allergic to hay, and definitely underappreciated. But in that moment, you can't help but whisper, "Nice dive, feathered lord." 3 glimmers of joy to glide toward sleep. Alderaan got a portrait. You got drawn once in charcoal on accident by a child. He has seasonal enrichment. You have seasonal allergies. His comeback flight was documented in Latin. Your best day was shouted across a muddy field. The seasons shift. Leaves curl into ochre spirals. Wine slips around the corners of the manor with a sly chill. And Alderaan, fresh from recovery, portrait complete, is now back to full royal bird status. You're still sweeping hay and trying to avoid the goose with unresolved anger issues. But there's something different in the air. Or maybe it's just the new incense the falconer insists on burning near the aviary for spiritual freshness. Today's activity, controlled free flight, sounds like a contradiction. Feels like one too. Alderaan is escorted to a sunlit clearing where 2 falconers, a scribe, and a small musician with a reed flute await. You once asked for help, lifting a barrel. No one came. The barrel fell on your foot. It's still purple. Alderaan lifts off with ease, gliding through open air like a sigh made visible. The falconer hums softly. The musician plays a single wistful note. The scribe writes, "Lift strong." Flight graceful. Mood sovereign. You tripped over a rake and someone wrote, "Needs supervision." But today isn't just about the flight. Today is about his place. The household is gathering for what they call the Circle of Bonding, a formal ceremony to honor a falcon's return to service. Not a party exactly. More like a medieval press conference, but with robes and meat pies. And of course, Alderaan is the guest of honor. Not you. You're here to hold the tray with ceremonial feathers. The lord of the manor stands beside the falconer, dressed in his best fur-lined tunic. He raises a goblet and says, "This creature reminds us of vigilance of power, of grace." Everyone nods. You nod too, but mostly because you're trying not to sneeze. Then it happens. Alderaan is granted a title. Officially ceremonially, with parchment and wax seal, Alderaan Skywarden of Glaston Court. You have no idea where Glaston is, but it sounds important. You once earned the title, "Hey You with the Broom." The bird is then led through the crowd, who bow slightly as he passes. You do too, not out of obligation, out of genuine, ridiculous awe. He looks like he knows it too, like he's walked this route in 20 lives. Later that day, you overhear someone say, "If only we treated each other as well as we do our falcons." And for once, you don't roll your eyes. Because it's true. In a world of short lives and long winters, where a toothache can spell disaster and nobody remembers your name unless they need something, there's something beautiful in how much care one creature receives. Not because it's practical, not even because it's profitable, but because it's sacred. That feathered little tyrant perched on his velvet stand has more health care than 10 villages combined. And somehow, that gives you hope. If a falcon can have foot rubs, velvet curtains, and 3 different oils for seasonal shine, maybe we haven't forgotten how to care. We've just been picky about where we aim it. You give the bird a quick wink on your way past. He doesn't blink back. Still, you saw it. 3 last fluttering smiles to tuck you into dreams. Alderaan now has a title, a theme song, and his own seating chart. You still share a stool with a milk jug. The falcon got a ceremony. You got blamed for the wind knocking over a bucket. He might not remember your name, but honestly, he probably does. You're standing at the edge of the manor's stables, holding a muddy shovel and watching something incredible happen. A falcon is being issued documents. Yes, documents. Not for taxes, not for land, for travel. Alderaan is heading out on an extended hunting tour across 2 neighboring counties, and apparently a bird of his status cannot simply flap across a border like some wild duck. No, he needs paperwork. You meanwhile crossed the river once to deliver onions and got accused of loitering. The scribe presents the travel folio with a small bow. It's made of stiff parchment, bound in soft leather, and sealed with the wax stamp of the house. Inside, details of Alderaan's health training lineage, and most fascinating of all behavioral expectations. That's right. The falcon has a formal personality profile. You've been described as mostly quiet, usually damp. The document also includes letters of introduction to local falconers, permission to use select mews along the route, and a record of his feeding preferences. Feeding. Preferences. You once asked not to be served gruel with bugs in it. They served it twice, out of spite. You sneak closer and spot the wax seal. It features a tiny falcon head circled by laurels. The seal is affixed next to a hand-drawn sketch of Alderaan in profile. You've never had a portrait. Someone once drew a stick figure and said it was probably you. A handler places the folder into a small satchel, lined with linen of course, and fastens it to the falcon's transport box. That box, by the way, is nicer than your home. Polished wood, brass hinges, air holes shaped like little stars, padded floor. You sleep on hay that was probably once used for a sheep who gave up. The reason for the journey: a tournament in a neighboring shire. Knights, lords, and falconers will gather to display their birds' flight prowess, and most importantly, prove they were raised in optimal conditions. You once tried to prove you could carry 2 buckets. They gave the credit to the cow. This isn't just about travel. This is about prestige mobility. Alderaan doesn't just go somewhere he arrives. Trumpets, embroidered banners, and a servant to spritz his feathers with rosewater before public appearances. You tried spritzing water on your face once and were asked if you were contagious. There's also a falcon companion permit. That's a real thing. It ensures only authorized handlers may interact with the bird. Touch without license fines. In some regions, even jail time. You were once pushed into a pig trough. No consequences. And yes, falcons sometimes had escort letters. Not for safety, well, partly, but also so that guards wouldn't question why a nobleman was carrying a live predator into a new town. The documents included notes like non-aggressive trained, not to startle livestock, and feeds only on prepared game. You once startled a goat and had to leave the village for 3 days. Even the route is planned. Stops are scheduled according to weather patterns, wind conditions, and herbal availability. If a certain herb isn't in bloom along the way, an alternate route is charted to ensure Alderaan's preferred blend of digestive support can be maintained. You once got lost in a fog and ended up at someone else's barn wedding. You were not invited. Scholars now study these travel logs as anthropological treasure. They reveal trade routes, seasonal hunting patterns, and even local herb economies. And all of it, every detail traced through the winged passport of a falcon. There's something elegant in how seriously it's taken. A respect for process, for preparation for the dignity of flight. But also, it's just kind of hilarious. Somewhere, someone is writing a visa for a bird who may or may not poop on the scroll. 3 soft giggles to pack with your dreams. Alderaan gets documents to cross borders. You need permission to borrow a spoon. He has a travel itinerary. You have a vague idea of probably home by sundown. His picture is on parchment. Yours is on a lost chicken poster. Twice. The fire crackles low in the great hall. Shadows dance across stone walls, and the night is thick with the kind of quiet that makes you think maybe the manor itself is asleep. You're sweeping again. What else is new, but this time slowly. Not from laziness. From thought. Alderaan is perched near the hearth, a position of honor. The Lord has guests tonight, minor nobles visiting monks, even a wandering physician, and each one has paused, nodded, or whispered something reverent toward the bird. He hasn't moved much. Just tilts his head now and then like a scholar deciding if you're worth his attention. You once tilted your head. They thought something was wrong with your neck. As wine flows and stories grow taller, a younger squire asks the question no one said aloud. Why the bird? Why do we do all this? Treat him better than, well, most people. There's a pause, a long one. Then the falconer, who rarely speaks at length, stands. Because he is what we are not, he says. He flies where we trudge. He hunts with precision we dream of. He answers to no leash, and yet he chooses loyalty. The hall is quiet now. Even the steward has stopped fussing. The falconer continues softer this time, and because when the world turns dark and rough, and men grow cruel, the bird stays noble, in body, in bearing, in being. You shift your broom. It's a little awkward to stand in the presence of something so beautifully unbothered, and maybe that's the secret. In a world where most people toil and ache and rarely get more than a passing well done, the falcon gets care, not because he needs it more, but because someone chooses to give it. Carefully, daily, tenderly, as if he matters. And isn't that what everyone wants to be cared for? Not just functionally, but intentionally. You glance at Alderaan. He blinks. Just once. It feels enough. Scholars may debate forever why falcons receive such high treatment. Some argue it was all status, all symbolism birds, as reflections of a nobleman's ego. Others suggest deeper bonds, affection, admiration, even love. But you think maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe caring for something even extravagantly is how you remind yourself you haven't turned hard inside. And maybe, just maybe, Alderaan cared back. After all, he always returned. 3 soft glimmers to end this flight. Alderaan had no leash but still came home. He got a seat by the fire. You stood nearby. And somehow, that was okay. He reminded them of freedom. You reminded them to be human. There's frost on the windows this morning, and your breath fogs the air as you haul a bucket that's half ice, half slush. Winter has arrived. You're wearing every piece of clothing you own, including a scarf that might actually be an old curtain. Your fingers are so cold, you're convinced you've developed peasant icicle syndrome, a very real condition you've made up. And yet Alderaan cozy as a loaf in an oven, because falcons, you see, don't just endure winter. They thrive in it, thanks to an elaborate regimen of seasonal care that most people would be lucky to receive from a royal physician. Step 1, the winter cloak. Yes, Alderaan has a cloak, a hooded one, lined with rabbit fur and trimmed with silk ribbon. It wraps around his shoulders and fastens beneath his chest with a carved bone clasp. You once tried wearing a potato sack with holes. It froze. While on you, the cloak isn't just for show. It's tailored to his body weight and wing length. There's even a spare in case one gets damp. The cloth is lightly scented with cedar oil to calm the mind. You calm your mind by standing next to the bread oven for 30 seconds before someone kicks you out. Step 2, heat management. Alderaan's mew is winterized. The walls are layered with thick cloth panels. The floor is lined with woolen pads, and a small clay stove is lit nearby every morning. The warmth is maintained at comfortable feather range, a phrase you didn't even know existed until now. Your room has a draft so persistent it once blew your candle out while it was still in your hand. Step 3, diet shift. Winter meals include richer meats, duck liver, rabbit fat, small fish served warm garnished with crushed thyme, and a dash of vinegar to keep the blood active. Alderaan gets 3 meals a day. You get 1.5, depending on how much bread someone else dropped. And then comes the spa treatment. Yes, spa. Every 3rd day, the falcon is given a warming rub, which is exactly what it sounds like. His legs, chest, and neck are gently massaged with a salve of goose fat and pine resin to keep his joints limber in the cold. Meanwhile, your knees have started clicking like a broken loom. After that, wing stretches. Gentle, supervised movements to prevent stiffness. You once stretched near the fire, and someone asked if you were possessed. Falconers even track how sunlight hits the mew. If the light shifts too far north and misses the perch, they reposition the entire structure. You haven't seen the sun in 3 days because the laundry's blocking your window. Here's the kicker. On extra cold nights, Alderaan sleeps inside the manor, not in a stable. In an actual room with a fire cushions, and sometimes, this is true, a blanket shaped like a little tent. It drapes over his perch to hold warmth. You once made a blanket tent and were fined for misusing the laundry. Historical records suggest some noble families invested more in falcon winter care than they did in their own footmen. One ledger even shows a week's worth of firewood budgeted for falcon comfort, while the servants' quarters were left to brave the season. You braved it last year and caught a chill so dramatic it nearly became folklore. And then just when you think it can't get more indulgent comes the seasonal soundscape. A musician is hired to play soft melodies near the mew during the coldest hours. The theory, gentle lute music, stimulates warmth in the chest and prevents melancholy. You once sang to yourself while chopping wood. Someone threw a cabbage, 3 warm little chuckles to carry into your blanket burrito. Alderaan gets a fur-lined cloak. You once wore a cat, accidentally. His room has a heat plan. Yours has a bucket labeled drip. He listens to live music to sleep. You listen to raccoons fighting over a beat. The chapel bells ring gently through the early mist, their tone warm and hollow, bouncing across the damp stone like sleepy whispers. You're dragging a sack of turnips, which at this point might weigh more than your entire future. But then you pause. Because something strange is happening near the church. Alderaan is being escorted toward the chapel doors. Now it's not your place to ask questions, mostly because someone will tell you to stop talking, but you can't help but wonder, is the falcon going to mass? Turns out yes. Yes, he is. See, in some noble households, especially the deeply pious or dramatically performative falcons, were more than status symbols. They were divine companions, creatures so majestic, so precise, so death from above stylish, that they were believed to reflect the will of God himself. So naturally, when important ceremonies occurred, feasts, blessings, holy days, a falcon was brought along, not as a guest, as a symbol. Alderaan is carried inside the chapel on a carved perch draped in gold-threaded cloth. You're still not allowed in the front pew because of the incident with the biscuits. The priest begins his sermon, but every so often his eyes flick toward the falcon as if waiting for a sign. Alderaan, to his credit, sits perfectly still, like a small, feathered bishop. Occasionally, He blinks. The congregation gasps softly. This is more than spectacle. This is theology. Some medieval texts describe falcons as creatures untainted by original sin, because they killed only to eat and did so with elegance. You once stepped on a snail and apologized for 3 days. During high feast days, certain lords would have falcons blessed, much like horses' crops or swords. A few bold theologians even debated whether falcons had souls. You've had that question asked about you in a much less flattering tone. Now comes the weirdest part. There's incense, not for people, for the bird. A tiny burner swings gently beside the perch, releasing puffs of frankincense said to clear the channels of divine focus. Alderaan barely flinches. You once sneezed during a candle lighting and were nearly excommunicated. After the service, the falcon is brought forward. A small blessing is whispered in Latin, something about strength, precision, and flight guided by the heavens. You tried reciting a prayer once. Someone said your accent offended 3 saints. Some say this practice started with Templar knights who believed falcons were messengers of divine justice. Others believe it was just nobles showing off in church. Probably both. Still, it's undeniably fascinating. Because while you mud-streaked semi-holy and chronically underfed are kneeling on a splintered pew, the bird is standing next to the altar, receiving blessings and gentle nods from people who forget your name weekly. And it goes deeper. Some noble families recorded dreams in which falcons appeared as omens or guides. I saw a white falcon circle the tower, thrice one duke wrote, and knew the king would die. You dreamed about falling into a porridge vat. No one consulted the stars. Even the church architecture sometimes included falcon symbolism. Stained glass altar carvings, marginalia in prayer books, all honoring a creature that, let's be honest, would eat you if you were a mouse. And yet, somehow, it doesn't feel offensive. It feels kind of comforting. That in a world where sickness spread like spilled ink and most people didn't make it past 40, someone looked at a bird and thought, maybe this creature knows something we don't. 3 feather-light chuckles to bless your dreams. Alderaan got a Latin blessing. You got called ye of questionable hygiene. His incense was custom blended. Yours was from a kitchen accident. The falcon stood near the altar. You still stand near the door just in case. The sky today is thick with clouds, the kind that press low like a lid on a soup pot. You're hauling firewood again, surprise, but something catches your eye near the orchard wall. A small crowd is gathering, quiet, respectful. Not a festival, not a sermon. A funeral, but not for a person. For Alderaan's brother, another falcon, gone. You blink, thinking maybe someone misheard. But no, this is real. You drop the firewood which no one appreciates and edge closer. They're laying the falcon to rest. He's wrapped in fine linen, the same kind used for infants and apparently elite birds. There's rosemary tucked at the wings, lavender. His hood is still unstitched with silver thread. You once had to bury a cat. It involved a hole a stick and a lot of guessing. This burial, it has a process. A small, carved box oak, polished, lined with wool, is placed at the center of a fresh dug plot in the herb garden. The priest says a few words, not just ashes to ashes. Real words. Words about loyalty air and the noble freedom of wing. You suddenly feel very dusty in your boots. And the falconer. He's weeping. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. The way someone weeps when something true and private is leaving. Then comes the offering. A few of the household members step forward and place tokens into the grave. A feather, a sprig of thyme, a drawing done by the steward's daughter. You offer a glance, nothing more, but in your chest, something sits heavy. This wasn't just a pet. This was a companion, a comrade, a presence. You hear someone say, the falcon will be remembered on the winter calendar in a special page of the household book. That means anniversaries, names written next to saints. You slipped in the well last June, and no one's marked that anywhere. Later that day, a tiny stone marker is placed at the head of the grave. It's not grand, no angel sculptures or carved sermons, but it's real. It has the falcon's name, and beneath it, the words, "He flew with honor." That alone makes you stop chewing. And here's the part that historians still argue about, whether this sort of burial was the exception or the norm. Some believe only the most noble falcons, those that served in war or belonged to kings, received rites like this. Others have uncovered surprising evidence, modest graves, well-recorded ceremonies, even entire falcon cemeteries near large estates. A few even suggest that some nobles believed their falcons would accompany them into the afterlife, guarding their spirits as they soared beyond the veil. You once had to guard a chicken coop. Different vibe. And don't even get scholars started on inheritance. That's right. In some noble wills, falcons were named in legal documents, passed down, assigned to specific handlers, given funds, actual money for continued care. You once inherited a splinter and some unfinished soup. You overhear the falconer muttering, "He liked the wind on market days best." No one says anything, but someone nods. Later, you notice Alderon sitting quietly in his mew. Not anxious, not sick, just still. You're not sure if he knows, but something in your gut says maybe he does. And for the rest of the evening, no one raises their voice. 3 gentle echoes to nest in your sleep. The falcon got a headstone. You got who scratched on a fence post. His memory is calendared. You once forgot your own birthday. He had a funeral procession. You once fell over and someone laughed. The wind is restless today. The kind that rattles shutters, lifts hay, and carries whispers you pretend not to hear. But it's not just the weather that feels off. It's Alderon. He's been unusually quiet. Not ill. Not injured. Just twitchy. Skittish. His feathers puff, then flatten. He jerks his head toward invisible sounds. Even the falconer seems puzzled. You recognize the feeling. That same odd energy before a thunderstorm or tax collection. By mid-morning, they've canceled his flight session. Not worth the risk, says the falconer, adjusting his glove. Not when the air feels like this. And that's when the old cook mutters something. It's the curse. Everyone stops stirring stew. You lean closer. The cook lowers her voice to a soft gravel whisper. There's a story. When a falcon twitches before a full moon and the air is thick with wood smoke, it means something's wrong. Something is coming. You've heard worse. But apparently, she's not the only one. Several households across the region once believed that a falcon's behavior predicted misfortune. If the bird refused food or stared into the distance for too long or preened obsessively, it was a sign. And not just of rain, of war or death or a failed harvest. They called it the feathered forewarning. You once missed a storm sign and got blamed for the leaky roof. But these people, they documented every sneeze. One noblewoman recorded 3 coughs from my hawk at twilight. Husband died within a fortnight. You don't even have a record of your birth. Back in the courtyard, Alderaan suddenly lifts off, not high, just one swift hop, then drops again. His claws scrape. His eyes go wide. The falconer swears softly. He checks the perch, the sky, the alignment of nearby objects. Nothing looks wrong. But that's exactly what makes it worse. The scribe is called. Notes are made. Sudden agitation. Refused quail. Beak jitter. You once had a beak jitter. It was just hunger. Now comes the fascinating part. In some regions, villagers paid falconers to observe their birds for omens. Not just nobles, entire communities would wait for the falcon's word before planting building or marching to court. There were even codes. If a falcon fluffed its neck feathers twice before noon, it meant delay travel. If it screeched while being hooded, it meant treachery nearby. If it broke a feather without struggle, it meant a spirit had passed close. You break stuff all the time. No one's ever seen it as spiritual. Falcons were believed to sense changes in air pressure magnetic fields, even human emotions. Some said they could see through illusions, detect lies, which might explain why Sir Gregory avoids Alderaan like the plague. He did borrow a coin pouch last spring and never returned it. That afternoon, a storm rolls in suddenly out of nowhere. A sharp wind, unexpected lightning, one tree blown clean out of the ground. The household gasps. The cook crosses herself. You just nod slowly. The falcon knew. And even if you're not superstitious, even if you prefer your omens in dream form or teacups, you can't deny the shiver in your spine as you watch Alderaan settle back into his perch. Calm now, feathers smooth, as if saying, I told you so. Tonight, everyone moves quieter. The lute player switches to minor chords. The steward double-checks the locks. You sleep near the hearth, not because it's warm, but because it feels safer under a ceiling. just in case the bird twitches again. 3 soft laughs from the edge of mystery. Alderaan senses storms. You sense chores. His feather fluff means death. Yours means bedbugs. The falcon has a weather forecast in his eyes. You rely on wet knees and guesswork. The fire crackles low in the great hall. Shadows dance across stone walls, and the night is thick with the kind of quiet that makes you think maybe the manor itself is asleep. You're sweeping again, what else is new, but this time slowly. Not from laziness, from thought. Alderaan is perched near the hearth, a position of honor. The Lord has guests tonight, minor nobles visiting monks, even a wandering physician, and each one has paused, nodded, or whispered something reverent toward the bird. He hasn't moved much. Just tilts his head now and then like a scholar deciding if you're worth his attention. You once tilted your head. They thought something was wrong with your neck. As wine flows and stories grow taller, a younger squire asks the question no one said aloud. Why the bird? Why do we do all this? Treat him better than, well, most people. There's a pause, a long one. Then the falconer, who rarely speaks at length, stands. Because he is what we are not, he says. He flies where we trudge. He hunts with precision we dream of. He answers to no leash, and yet he chooses loyalty. The hall is quiet now. Even the steward has stopped fussing. The falconer continues softer this time, and because when the world turns dark and rough, and men grow cruel, the bird stays noble, in body, in bearing, in being. You shift your broom. It's a little awkward to stand in the presence of something so beautifully unbothered. And maybe that's the secret. In a world where most people toil and ache and rarely get more than a passing well done, the falcon gets care not because he needs it more, but because someone chooses to give it. Carefully, daily, tenderly, as if he matters. And isn't that what everyone wants to be cared for? Not just functionally, but intentionally. You glance at Alderaan. He blinks. Just once. It feels enough. Scholars may debate forever why falcons receive such high treatment. Some argue it was all status, all symbolism birds, as reflections of a nobleman's ego. Others suggest deeper bonds, affection, admiration, even love. But you think maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe caring for something even extravagantly is how you remind yourself you haven't turned hard inside. And maybe, just maybe, Alderaan cared back. After all, he always returned. 3 soft glimmers to end this flight. Alderaan had no leash but still came home. He got a seat by the fire. You stood nearby. And somehow, that was okay. He reminded them of freedom. You reminded them to be human.